All right, folks, we are back. We are back for July e-grocery sales insights with our dear friend David Bishop. David, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well today. How about yourself, Mark?
Good. Surviving summer.
That's good.
It's been a hot one, dry
Yeah.
as well, smoky. It's been very smoky.
Well, yeah. We're choking on the Canadian smoke today.
Yeah,
Another air quality alert for us down here in Chicago.
yeah. It's unfortunate. It's just Canada. It's like it's mostly forest, so it's all right. So let's get into the numbers. Well, we'll talk around the numbers and see what nuggets of insights we can pull out in our chat. So first thing I'm going to ask you, I read your statement around this structural change as far as delivery goes. So I want you to define or explain to the audience what you mean by structural. Are we in a permanent free delivery era?
Yeah. So I think the short answer is yes, we are. And let's just kind of unpack what I mean by that. I apologize for folks who watch this all the time, but Walmart is really leading a lot of these conversations that we're having. And obviously, the market responds accordingly. Then the question is, what's the appropriate reaction
Mhm.
or response that you should have? Now, that's a slightly different conversation. Let's just keep in mind that Walmart's share of the e-grocery market is continuing to swell. We've talked about in the past. Walmart has made no secrets about their desire to move more of their business online. When you look at their marketing message, you can go onto their website or see some of the communications they talk about when they talk about delivery. And what they say is free delivery, right? Is it free? No, because in delivery's case, there's still the added cost of gratuity. So, what we're
Mm.
really saying about free delivery is that the standard fee associated with the delivery is waived so long as you're now a member of Walmart Plus.
So the threshold is lower compared to previous, right? So to your point, tip is still expected.
Tip is still expected, it's optional. If you went to their in home service, tip is no longer required, and it may
Mm.
not even be optional because they're using their own employees, somewhat like Kroger. They actually do market in home
Mhm.
as not requiring a tip. But there is an incremental charge associated with in home because that is a value added service. Their operating model is different for in-home as opposed to, let's say, same day express, right? They're not relying on their Spark network to do the in-home. They're using their own employees and their own vehicles to do that. So those are waged employees. They're not contractors or independent workers or contract. When you look at it from that standpoint, people are saying, oh, I want free delivery. What their message doesn't say, if you look at the banner ad on their website, it doesn't have even a footnote that says only available for Walmart Plus. So a customer isn't seeing all the details behind that. They're just seeing free delivery. We know the power of free, right? And so as they get into that, it becomes the enticement, the carrot and the stick, if you will, for attracting more customers to become members for Walmart in order to avoid the fee. We have said for a long time, and I think it bears repeating, explicit fees are the number one reason, whether
Mhm.
it's tied or exclusive, for the number one reason people are not using online for delivery because of that incremental cost that they're trying to avoid, right? We've said it another way. Consumers want to avoid paying more than necessary. And memberships in Walmart's case allows them to do that, right? Because you may pay $98 or $49 depending on whether you signed up for the annual on deal or not. And now once that happens, we see the realization of that promise materialize in the sense that we're no longer paying $9.95 standard delivery fee or maybe $7.95 during the lower demand periods. And instead, we're going through that checkout, and the only added cost that we have to consider is how much are we going to tip?
So that gets me to the next question I have for you. We've conducted research in the past together. We've advocated for retailers, grocers who have curbside pickup to utilize variable fee rates to help offset the cost of serving the online customer. Two questions. One, are the structural change, how do you see it affecting curbside pickup for the regional grocer in terms of a cost structure? And is this now something that supermarkets need to compete with Walmart against? And I'll give you an example. A lot of regionals use departments within their stores as loss leaders. For example, meat counters. Is curbside going to become a loss leader for regionals? And does that necessitate they'll have to look for revenue elsewhere to offset the cost to serve?
I don't believe that curbside needs to be or should be the loss leader. Walmart has a service fee for orders under their minimum, and then it triggers a $6.99 charge. But virtually everything avoids that fee. So in effect, it's free, right? Probably 95% of their orders would not be below that threshold. So everyone's getting it for free. Now, regionals typically had assigned a service fee even for pickup, but it had been variable only in the sense based on spending thresholds. And while that was effective in the early days, primarily to help raise AOVs, we're past that. So really the variable structure requires fees to be tiered based on the cycle time, or I hesitate to say speed, right? How quickly someone wants to receive that order. And you can look at whether it's Walmart, or actually not Walmart, but someone like an HEB who has the standard pickup windows that most regionals have, which generally are 3 to 4 hours after you've completed the checkout. But they may have an express pickup that would allow you to pick it up quicker than within 3 hours, maybe in an hour or hour and a half. Hy-Vee would be an example as well. And with that tier structure, you can still motivate or nudge consumers without a membership to pick the time slot that most aligns with their needs. If you're looking to do a big cart purchase, your weekly stock up trip, odds are you don't need it within an hour or two. So most likely you're going to be motivated to save a few dollars by taking a later time. Now that later time could also be free, but the point is the tiered approach allows the customer more control over the choice, and there's an incentive financially connected to it.
So you don't see any pressure, though, from the mass merchant, Walmart, on regionals to change their tiered structure. So it essentially becomes a free service.
In that scenario, if a retailer is looking to waive or completely eliminate those fees because they believe it's necessary to remain competitive against Walmart and keep those customers that may be shifting over to Walmart, then in that case, we would be recommending to those retailers to consider where the offset in their business or operating model will come, because that may be $3.95, and that $3.95 helped absorb some of the added costs associated with even bringing it to the car. We've talked in the past about One Way, which was introducing a bifurcated pricing program where online you were marking up products, maybe not all products, protecting known value items or key known value items, protecting ad items. We've met a fair amount of resistance there, as you know, Mark, because a lot of regionals believe that it's important for them to offer the same price online as in store. And we've gone back and forth and shown them evidence supporting that move. But until they do that, then they need to find their offset in other efficiencies, which are going to come into assembling those orders. So you only are going to realize those through batching out more orders together, and then distribution efficiency, whether it's batching out more orders in a delivery to a driver or batching out more to that employee who's orchestrating the pickup order in the staging area, and they can bring out two simultaneously. You know, someone like Target was really on the leading edge there doing that. In both cases, volume is a predicate for you to do that. And if that's the case, then if you're lacking in the sheer volume, then using other price tactics like the tiered variable fee structure may help you accomplish that more effectively by nudging or shaping demand in ways that enable you to get more efficiencies through those two areas.
Yeah, you hit on 2 points where, yes, more efficiencies through the in-store fulfillment method, batch primarily. And then I would also expect more emphasis on retail media to help offset the cost online.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And from the work we did with Mercatus a couple years ago, we had telegraphed that Walmart was going to go from making roughly $3 in order to over $4 in order in their fiscal year 25, which they finished already. They're now in fiscal year 26. They've gone through the first quarter. I looked at their numbers, and I would say our estimates that we made back then are still intact. It looks as though the compound average growth rate they've had over those 2 years is right around 27, 28% growth in their media dollars. It's hard to really get a precise number because some of those ad dollars are tucked under cost of goods, while others are actually in the other revenue line. But again, we're seeing the average retail media dollars conservatively per order for US Walmart operations north of $4 today already, probably closer to $4.30. And again, that's a very conservative estimate based on how we've assigned the overall ad monies based on what we know of the business. So they are able to do that, but better than I do on the regional side where they are today. 2 years ago, the regionals that we were looking at were polling the equivalent of 35 cents per order in retail media, right? I don't know how that's changed. Do you have any?
Yeah, I would, it varies, of course, but I would say it's even declined because ad inventory is skewed more towards the larger retailers than it is to the regionals.
Yeah, and I'd also add that Walmart, while they're in an admirable position, now is faced with this really seismic shift. This whole discussion about agentic shopping and what does that
Yes.
do, and how does that
Yes.
impact exposure impressions, which trigger your ad dollars. So I don't think anyone has all the answers yet. We certainly don't, but clearly you would believe or anticipate Walmart is looking at this with a mind's eye of how do we protect and grow that source of revenue because it is so incredibly important to us.
Yeah,
So they're not out of the woods, but they're going to be facing the same challenges just from a slightly different position.
yeah. I was just reading something before this recording. Walmart's expecting the search box to go away, and it's all going to be conversational commerce. At least that's where their thinking is going.
I don't see that today. I used Sparky this morning. It wasn't as helpful as I would have hoped or expected based on what I'm reading. But I know some of this may be over the horizon activities that are coming out soon. And obviously the pace of change in Walmart is really leading that too. I'm not dismissing that it's not going to happen, but I think the big question is when and how
Yes.
fast. I don't think you're going to see the search bar disappear overnight, even at Walmart in the next
No,
5 years. Maybe.
It's learned behavior. They'll be augmenting it. They hired the gentleman from Instacart for a reason.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, especially when we get to agentic shopping, that grocery shopping is very different than shopping for all these other things, right? It's
Oh,
very
absolutely.
much
Yes.
a sensory experience and a very personal one. And there is a degree of risk, especially with the center plate items, that people are going to look at differently. How it plays out is going to vary between, let's say, electronics, clothing, and grocery. So it will be interesting to watch and see how that develops. But I agree with you. Yeah, once the user interface comes out and we can see how it works and how it enhances the shopping experience, then we'll have a better idea of what that means. Because the other issue that we would be concerned about is the impact on impulse or less planned purchases.
Correct.
If you're only telling the agentic shopping bot what you're looking for, then the ability to add items to the basket, even through personalization, is going to be minimized or limited to a degree.
A source of innovation, perhaps. Let's go back to the July numbers. July saw a record spike in the number of monthly active users, but the number of households who bought online barely budged, or whoever bought online. What's really driving the surge? Is it mostly the infrequent or lapsed shoppers coming back? And if so, what does this say about the untapped value in these segments?
We've been saying for some time, or at least I've been saying to you or others who would listen, that we really have a pretty good idea of the size of the total addressable market, right? The total customer pool, as defined by households who've ever shopped online for groceries, is not expanding at a impressive rate. It is continuing to decline. Now it's at 0.35% year over year. Last year it was about 0.6%, right? So we're having that deceleration as we max out and hit that ceiling where we're around 80+% of household penetration. So what, to answer your question, where we're seeing the customers come from if they're not new to online is that it's really motivating the less frequent. And by less frequent here, I mean those households who purchased online 2 to 3 months ago. That's where the bulk of these monthly active users are resurfacing. The remainder is coming from those who haven't done so for between 4 and 12 months. Okay. After 12 months,
Right.
those are really where we have the lost customers. They just haven't come back. And we believe that the thing that would primarily bring them back today is not different than what it would have been during the pandemic or before the pandemic, which is some type of life event, right? Marriage, birth, things of that sort, health issue. So what's bringing the infrequent people back are changes in the different services that are available. Some may be increased availability. Amazon now is expanded into more rural areas, so that increased access improves the availability. That's going to bring some people on, but it's really the attractiveness, which is where programs have changed that are going to elicit someone to give another service that maybe they haven't used or haven't used for a long time another try. You might have tried Walmart a few years ago and you're like, I'm not sure. The cost issue of the delivery and the gratuity still might have been just a barrier for them. Now, after all these promotional cycles, they realize, gee, I got in on the annual plan for $49. I mean, that's really like $4 a month, right? And I was paying $7.95 for delivery, so I make it back right away.
Yeah.
And so that compelling proposition there, just that financial piece, could be enough to elicit that response. Somewhat like what we used to think about what about a free trial? There's no risk there and there's no cost. Well, but it also plays on different aspects of the value proposition. A free offer really just plays to the penny pincher in all of us. So we are attracting, as a consequence, customers who tend to be more cherry pickers. Whereas if we structured it around the membership, the value perception is not framed specifically on free, right? It's what do you have to do to get to free?
I don't know if you know the answer to this question. Let's call them super users, the ones who are more than four or more orders in a month. And you say they're now making up more than half of all online shoppers. Where would you say these super users as a group really are centered? Is it with Walmart? Is it with the third-party delivery companies?
Walmart has really upped their game in this case. I don't have the specific answer. It's a great question, and I can look into it. What we can see is just going back to July 23 to July of 25, that 4+ you call super user, and I want to be clear to other folks, the 4+ consumer segment reflects customers who have used the same service 4 or more times over the last 3 months, right?
3 months, okay.
And so that's not a really high bar when we're thinking you should be placing 2 orders on average a month. But why that's important is those customers are significantly more likely to continue using the service. We have that in the repeat intent rates. They are consistently spending 50% more than the first timers of that service and probably 30% more than those who are on their second and third. So as we've talked over the years, Mark, even with Sylvain, was the importance of getting to that third or fourth order because you've now established a new routine, a new habit, right? That insulates you to a degree. And what we've seen is the share of users of those services that are in this camp have gone from 30% of the user mix to over 50%. It's like 56%, I think it was in July. And so that is helping boost order frequencies and AOVs overall, it is also helping immunize those customers for those particular retailers, because the primary reason that those customers are going to stop using that service is that they had a terrible experience. So if the retailer can avoid an unforced error in their execution, those customers are the most valuable ones to keep. Now, you need to continue to fill in the pipeline and feed that. But the first timers, as you know, it's only getting harder to attract, and it's even getting even harder to retain them, because if we're throwing a lot of financial deals, and by that I mean these free offers, free on the first 3 deliveries, most likely you're going to see a higher churn rate with that customer than the customer who came in through another promotion that might have been less price driven.
Other than free delivery or membership, what in your purview is an effective promotional offer to get a user to go from 1 time, 2 times to be more than 4 times in that 3-month period?
So if we're focused on that, we've already acquired the customer. Mm-hmm. They're now in that first timer stage. We recognize that first time is probably going to be the most challenging experience for that user, because they have very little familiarity, if at all, with the platform. Really moving that person or customer from the first to second to third is a function of making it easier for that customer to move through that shopping experience in terms of finding the products that they're looking for, being able to take advantage of deals that are presented to them, showcasing how you're saving money for them along that trip. And then after order's complete, communicating in an appropriate manner and delivering, whether it's pickup or delivery or ship to home, on time, the order, as close to perfect as perfect can be, in terms of the same number of items in quality on time.
So there's not really one single silver bullet. It's the entire experience, from engagement all the way through to transaction.
And that's most true, we believe, in those early user experiences with that retailer. And the second time is going to be a little easier, because now we have some past purchases that are helping us build the basket, as well as inform the algorithms, right? As well as our search. We've talked about that in the past. And again, as that continues to go, then we expose ourselves, the customer that is, to other features and functionalities that the site may have. But we kind of ladder up into that. Obviously, we're not using those things until we have the ability to. The user experience is so critical in the first, second, and third. By the time you get to the fourth, you now have a good baseline of experience. You understand the navigation of that site. You've now had 3 purchases under your belt. Most likely, the majority of the items that you're going to be buying from that retailer are sitting in there, or now you're starting to add other items. Once you get to that fourth order, part of it is now, how do you keep coming back? Well, this would be where it could be a reward. A reward is kind of after the fact, and it could be structured as a deal back. That's what Walmart does with their Walmart Bucks. Mm-hmm. You are going through the process, looking for your items. Not only do they have rollbacks, but they're going to highlight for you ones that have manufacturer deals that allow you to get Walmart cash that you can then use on a future trip, or maybe cash out, right? But the idea is, now you're showing them ways you're saving, and they're not getting to realize all the savings on that specific order, but rather there's now some that they've accrued that are sitting in this use it or lose it account that motivates them to come back, right? Because no one wants to lose something that they have, especially when it was, money.
I think that's a great observation to end on. Not everyone is likely aware of how Walmart operates its cashback program. Maybe we can get into that next month. David, really appreciate your time today. Great insights as usual. Folks, if you want to get in contact with David, please reach out to me, mark.fairhurst@mercatus.com. David's always willing to get on a call, Teams, Zoom, what have you, and provide some one-on-one advice and insight. David, thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.